Hello dear friends, today is June 25th, Wednesday. I will start with what is now the meaning of the life of President Trump because this
Начну с того, что составляет сейчас смысл жизни президента Трампа, поскольку от этого, к сожалению,
unfortunately depends
зависит
on a lot
очень
of things
очень
all over the
многое по
world.
всему
Trump's
миру.
approval rating has
Рейтинг
reached a new
одобрения
minimum.
Трампа
This is said
достиг
by
нового минимума. Об этом говорят данные
the latest
последнего
issue held by
опроса,
respected
проведенного
publications,
уважаемыми
actors, Economist, and
изданиями,
YouGov.
акторами Economist и YouGov.
And most importantly, it was carried out
И
against
главным
Trump's
образом
decision to
это
bomb Iran.
было проведено на фоне решения Трампа отбомбиться по Ирану.
Now his work is approved
Сейчас
by
его
40
работу одобряет
respondents.
40
40,
респондентов,
54 does not approve.
54
That
не
is, the pure
одобряют.
rating is, this is the worst indicator for the
14
entire
самый
second term of
показатель
Trump.
за весь второй срок Трампа.
Well, in general,
Следующее,
as
как
we
мы
know,
знаем,
for all
за
the
все
time,
время
at least after the end of the
правления
Second
после
World
окончания
War.
Второй мировой войны.
The same negative dynamics
Аналогичная
on the key issue
негативная
of inflation
динамика
and
по ключевым
prices.
вопросам
This is the
инфляции и
main point
цен.
of his pre-election campaign,
Главный
where he
пункт его
said that he was out
предвыборной
of
кампании,
competition,
говорил,
which is
что
why
этот
he was
будет,
elected in
почему
a
его в значительной степени избрали.
protective degree, believe me,
Победой
in his
его
fairy
спас Новый
tale.
год.
His rating
Минус,
here is
его
minus
рейтинг здесь
26.
минус
Now, according
26.
to the results of the 12-day
Теперь по результатам 12-дневной
war
как бы
between Israel and
войны
Iran,
Израиля и
the
Ирана,
situation, the way he acted on this
ситуация,
issue, is
то, как
percent.
он действовал по этому вопросу, минус 17%.
Moreover, this
Рухнул
indicator collapsed
этот
literally the
показатель
last days
рухнул
after they
буквально последние дни после удара по ядерным объектам Ирана.
impact on Iranian nuclear
Неделю
facilities. A
раньше
week
это
earlier
было
it was
минус
minus
4,
4, now
теперь
it
минус
is.
17.
There is a
Есть
reason to
основания
assume that the
предполагать,
further
что
this
чем
indicator,
дальше идет
well, actually all the
этот
rest, but this one
показатель,
in
то
particular,
все
will
остальные
continue to roll
показатели
down.
будет дальше катиться вниз.
And
И
this is
связано
connected with
это
a
со
scandal,
скандалом,
a real
настоящим
scandal
скандалом,
which erupted
который
yesterday,
разразился
according
вчера,
to which, during which it
согласно
became clear that
в
Trump,
ходе которого стало ясно, что Трамп,
well, just
ну,
so, simply
он
speaking,
просто
deceives
так
the
образно
population,
говоря,
voters in the United
обманывает
States, and deceives the
население
whole world,
избирателей в Соединенных Штатах и обманывает весь мир,
saying that
заявляя,
these
что
blows have solved
эти
the issue
удары
of
решили
Iran's
вопрос
nuclear
ядерной проблемы
program, that it is
Ирана,
no
что
longer
ядерки
there.
больше
But
нет.
those materials that appeared yesterday are
Вот
convincingly
те
evidence
материалы,
that
которые
this is
появились
just
вчера,
an
убедительно
elementary lie.
свидетельствуют о том, что это просто элементарная ложь.
Or if softly diplomatically, to
Дипломатически
issue what is
называть
desirable for what
желаемое
is
за
real.
действительное. Но тут,
But here
понимаете,
you
на
see
таком
on some
моменте увидеть
small,
ложь,
innocent lie, it is
ситуация
almost impossible to
невозможна,
sit
потому что
back because this
это
is
не
not
тот
the issue on
вопрос,
which one can,
по
let's
поводу
say,
которого
be a
можно
little
быть
confused.
немножко соврамши, скажем так.
This is a
Это
matter
вопрос
of national
национальной
security,
безопасности
both with the
и
United
Соединенных
States and in
Штатов,
the
и на
Middle East
Ближнем
and much
Востоке,
further.
и
Europe
гораздо
in
дальше.
general,
Европа на очень большом счету,
since this
поскольку
concerns
это
the treaty
касается
on the
договора
distribution of nuclear
нераспространения
weapons,
ядерного
it
оружия,
concerns
это
the whole
касается
world.
всего мира. Ну,
Well,
давайте
let's sort it
разберем
out. We'll have to go back a
величайшую
little bit to the
событие,
very beginning of the war between
начало, самого
Israel and
начала
Iran, when
войны
literally
между
they.
Израилем и Ираном, когда буквально на
Next
следующий
day
день
after
после
the first
первых
strikes of
ударов
Israel, the
Израиля,
Israeli aviation, I
израильской
said in my
авиации,
video that
я
since we are
сказал в
talking
своем
about serious
видео, что
issues,
поскольку речь идет о серьезных вопросах, таких как
such as nuclear materials needed for atomic
ядерные материалы,
bombs, then the
необходимые для
question is
атомной
simple.
бомбы, то тут вопрос стоит просто.
If you start
Если ты
military
начинаешь
actions in order to
военные действия,
destroy, you need to be
для того, чтобы
100%
уничтожить,
sure that you will
нужно
achieve
идти,
this.
нужно иметь стопроцентную уверенность, что ты этого достигнешь.
Because if you
Потому
do
что
not
если ты
achieve
этого не
this, if you
достигнешь
do not
и
destroy, then the
уничтожишь,
situation can become
ситуация
worse
может
than
стать
it was
хуже,
before
чем
you
она
started
была
to
до того,
act.
как ты начал
And after
действовать.
that, the
И
ongoing
вот
development of
после
events
этого
goes in these
неуклонное
directions.
развитие событий идет именно в этих направлениях.
If you remember, the next day after
Если
the
вы
bombing of
помните,
Iran's
на
nuclear
следующий же день
facilities
после
with B-2
удара
bombers,
бомбардировщиками Б-2 по ядерным объектам Ирана,
the next
на
day,
следующий день
President Trump and his defense
президент
minister
Трамп,
hexed,
новый
well, I
министр
think
обороны
hexed, the
Хексет,
defense minister is
ну,
just a
я, в общем,
mockery
лучше
of the
скажу,
position of the defense minister
Хексет,
and all the armed
министр обороны, это
forces.
насмешка просто над должностью министра обороны и всеми вооруженными силами.
It's
Ну,
even
даже
hard for me
язык
to
с трудом
pronounce his
поворачивается
title, but I have to
назвать
do
его этим
something
темным
about it.
титулом. Ну, что делать приходится?
So they
Вот,
pathetically stated that the
они
matter was resolved, the
пафосно
Iran
заявили
nuclear
о том, что
program
вопрос
was
решен,
destroyed,
ядерная
obliterated,
программа
erased,
Ирана
everything
уничтожена,
was erased
obliterated,
from the face of the earth.
все стерто с лица земли.
And to this day,
И
it's
до
only
сих пор
two
это
people
только
who
два
are sure to
человека,
talk about it.
которые
Only two,
уверенно
I
говорят
emphasize.
об этом. Только два, подчеркиваю.
Because the chairman of the United Committee of the Chiefs of Staff, who was asked a direct question about the nuclear program, said, "We need to wait. We will conduct an examination, an investigation, to determine for sure at the expert level whether they are destroyed or not, are they there or not, these crumbling substances, and so on." And all the rest, still respected people, professionals in the military, in intelligence, and not only in the United States, but also abroad, they all say like this, very carefully. But the wave is growing more and more that nothing has been destroyed and everything is intact. I'll tell you more. The only person who supported Trump and Hexit Trump in the fact that everything was resolved, everything was bombed, world became safer is the example of Netanyahu. This is understandable because these two horses, as I called them when they started this operation, they started it together. They brought this situation to an end. They have no way back. They are now forced to say that it was a success, because if it was not a colossal success, 100%, then this is their colossal defeat with the heaviest potential consequences. Well, they reported it. We discussed with you that this is all nonsense. You need to be convinced of this, and how can you be convinced? Everything is now buried there, buried. How to get there? Otherwise you can't. You need to see this case when you need to invert, by and large. And yesterday CNN received, they had a slid in the telecom. Complete secret document prepared by Pentagon Military Intelligence, Defense Intelligence Agency. This is like a guru or a group. And this document in turn was prepared in CENTCOM. And it is very important to understand how it was prepared, who did it, and what it means, because it opens the eyes to the whole picture. The operation for applying this bomb strike of the B-2 to nuclear facilities, I told you about it, was prepared by CENTCOM, led by General Kurillo. And when the decisive meeting of Trump was going on, where the decision was made to apply or not to apply, Kurillo stated absolutely firmly, "We can do it, we will apply." And he kept his word. From the point of view of what was required from him, from his subordinates, they all did it 100%. It was not his fault that the result did not reach the goal, because he was dealing with that bomb, with those calculations that others made. And so, technically, from a military point of view, everything was great. And immediately after the blow, the CENTCOM, its headquarters are in Florida, in Tampa, and the headquarters are located at the American base Al Udeid in Qatar. This is the largest base where 13,000 people are based. By the way, the Iranians who carried out the so-called ceasefire were the last to respond to it. So they organized all this, of course, the best specialists gathered there. Since the strike took place for the first time in combat conditions, for the first time, I'm sure there were representatives of the companies that developed this bomb, scientists, testers, who one way or another, because the question was whether it would finish or not, will it destroy or not destroy. And immediately after the strike, a document was prepared. Well, I will not say that it does not immediately mean that in the first 5 minutes he took some time. But right on the spot, having received all the data that could be obtained, the answer was prepared. According to this answer, the goal was not achieved. The object, and this means the bunkers in which, or the underground halls in which these centrifuges were located, which generally enriched this uranium, that they were not destroyed, or to a significant extent damaged. Well, on the basis of what, military scientists came to this conclusion. The fact is that on this bomb, the JBU-57, there are special fuses, that is, explosives.
то есть взрывателей,
Which I don't know.
которые,
Again, I'm not a specialist in making these bombs.
я не
I'm
знаю,
telling you now
я
what
не
I've read.
специалист в изготовлении этих бомб, это я вам сейчас рассказываю то, что я прочитал.
So
Что
these
вот эти
explosives that
взрыватели,
act on this
которые приводят в
bomb, they
действие
are
эту бомбу,
connected with sensors that
они
determine when it
связаны с
needs to be
датчиками,
exploded.
которые определяют, когда ее надо взрывать.
There is a program, they are
Там есть
programmed in such a
программа,
way that they
и они
must explode when they
запрограммированы
reach a
таким
certain
образом, что они
depth,
должны взорваться тогда, когда достигнут определенной глубины
or a certain level through
или
which the ground,
определенных
through which
пород,
this
через
bomb
которые
passes, or
будет
when it
через
reaches this
которые
bomb
проходит эта
cavity.
бомба. Или когда достигает эта бомба полости.
In the ground, I mean, there are
Понимаете?
bunkers there,
Имеется
or
в
there
виду
is a
там,
hall where
когда,
these
допустим,
centrifuges
центробор
are.
находится
They do
сзади,
not
где
need to
стоят
explode.
вот эти центрифуги. Не надо взрываться.
That
То
is,
есть
by the
по
algorithm and
алгоритму
by when the explosion took place,
и
by what the fuse
по
was set,
тому,
or the
когда
fuse was
произошел
programmed,
взрыв.
so to speak.
Значит, на что настроен был вот этот фьюз или запал, запрограммирован, так сказать.
It can be
Можно
determined when it
определить,
exploded, what
когда
kind of
она
soil it
взорвалась,
passed at that time, and the soil or the
и какой
autopulleys,
грунт
and
она в это
so
время
on.
проходила, и грунт или уже автополос и так далее.
And here are the
И вот
specialists
те
who did this, came to the
специалисты,
conclusion that
которые
the bomb did
сделали
not
вывод
reach the
такой,
target.
что
That is, it did
бомба
not reach the
не
target, it did
достигла
not
цели. Почему
destroy the
достигла цели?
necessary
Не
object.
уничтожила. Не уничтожила нужный объект.
I
Давайте вот
emphasize that
были
these were the best
лучшие
specialists in the world who have the right to
лучшие
expertly speak on
специалисты в
this
мире,
topic.
которые имеют право экспертно говорить на эту тему.
They prepared, they
Они
calculated
готовили,
all these
они
algorithms
вместе
together when
рассчитывали
these
вот эти
fumes
все
should work,
алгоритмы,
and they then
когда должны
calculated it by
сработать
the
эти
results.
запалы. И они это потом по результатам подсчитали.
So far, no one can say
Больше
anything
до
about it.
сих пор никто ничего по этому поводу так, соответственно, сказать не может ни слова.
But
Но
Trump and
Трамп
Hexley the
сердцем
next
на
day,
следующий
without
день,
having
не
any
имея
data at all,
никаких
they brazenly stated
данных
that
вообще,
100%,
их
as Chesley said,
заявляли,
went through the
что
Fox channels
100%, как
after that.
Jensen говорил, пошло после этого через каналы Fox.
Under the brilliant
По
leadership of President Trump, the goal was achieved. During the
блестящему
brilliant
руководству
operation,
президента
everything was
Трампа
destroyed.
цель достигнута в ходе блестящей операции, все было уничтожено, все это было
Everything was sucked out of the fingers,
просто
it was just a
фантастика.
fantasy.
И
And
вот
now
теперь
this document
появляется
appears and
документ,
CNN
и
smashes
CNN
it.
его
Well, and the response
сливает.
begins, the
Ну
explanation.
и начинается ответное, значит, объяснение.
Trump, of course, was wildly
Обладающий
offended,
правительством
cruelly offended,
жесточайшей
and the
объяснение.
answer was
Ответ
followed by the
последовал
White House
от
Press Secretary
пресс-секретаря Белого
Caroline
дома
Hewitt.
Caroline Hewitt. И вот
And this answer is
этот ответ,
something.
это
That is,
что-то.
it characterizes both the
Он
intellectual
характеризует
state of the
и
entire
интеллектуальное,
administration
так
and,
сказать,
in
состояние
particular, on this
интеллекта
issue.
всей администрации, ну и в частности по этому вопросу. Она
He
высказала,
said,
я
I
сейчас
almost
цитирую,
quote,
высказала
he said it in
такую
this way that smuggling is
что
absolutely
слитие
secret
этой
information.
совершенно
And this
секретной информации, а
information,
эта
that
информация,
is,
то есть
this
это был документ,
document,
он
he has
уже из
already come from the
Центрального
central
командного
command of the
поступил
Pentagon's intelligence
управление
department, and there, on the
разведки
basis of his
Пентагона, и там,
document.
значит, составили на основании его документ.
So
Так вот,
deleting this document
слитие
aims to
этого
humiliate the
документа
president as well.
имеет целью унизить президента, а
As to
также
blow up, what is it? The Renault me of those great, brave
подорвать, что
pilots
ли,
and other
реноме
military men who
тех
carried out this operation.
великолепных, храбрых пилотов и других военных, которые осуществляли эту операцию. Потому что
Because
каждый,
everyone,
вот
this
это
is the
ключевое
key proposal
предложение,
that
которое я
shocked
отрицал.
me. That everyone
Потому
knows
что
that if you
каждый
throw a
знает,
15-ton
что
bomb from a
ежели
long,
30-тысячных фунтов, там, 15 тонн бомбу сбросить с большого
distance
расстояния
down, then it
вниз,
will definitely
она
destroy the object.
обязательно
That's the
уничтожит
answer.
объект.
You know, the last phrase killed
Вот
me for
такой
my
ответ. То
idiotism.
есть, понимаете, последняя фраза меня убила по своему идиотизму.
That
То
is, it
есть,
turns out that any
получается,
American,
что
yes,
любой
what is
американец,
love,
да
she
что там
said,
любой,
everyone
она
knows.
сказала, каждый знает, любой
The
человек,
first person to
появившийся на
appear here with the
свете,
milk of his
силовом
mother in
браке
the
в
first
первые
seconds of
секунды
his
своей
life
жизни
or
или
minutes absorbs
впитывает
this
это
knowledge
знание,
sent to him from
посланное
higher
ему
spheres,
свыше
from
с неба,
somewhere.
откуда-то, что
That if a
если
15-ton bomb
15-тонную
is dropped,
бомбу
it will
сбросить вниз,
definitely
то
destroy the
точно
object.
уничтожит объект. И вот
And
после
after
этого это
that, it
все
all went through
прошло
the
через
battle
боевой
sheet of the
листок
administration,
администрации,
which,
который
as I call it
мы
now,
называем сейчас
Fox
Fox
News,
News,
that this is all the
что это все
discreditation of the
дискредитация
president, our
президента,
military want to
наших
spit there, and
военных
so on,
хотят
although the
обливать и
military
так
did
далее. Хотя
everything
военные
brilliantly.
блестяще все сделали.
It
Не
all
это,
depended on them. There
не
were
от них
also
все это
scientists who
зависело.
took part, and for
Там
the
еще
first time it was
ученые
all used.
принимали
Well, that's
участие.
how it
И
is, so
впервые это
let's
все
move on.
применялось. Ну вот так, значит, пошло дальше ситуация.
I repeat, there were two
Повторяю,
people there,
что
according to the state of
нагревалось
yesterday.
два
Only two people are the
осознательно вчерашний
sources
день,
that
только два
everything is
человека
fine. Great, all the questions have been solved. Hext and Trump. Vance is the vice president. He is a cunning guy. He fell into the trap. He said when he was asked directly on the phone, "Where is this uranium? It disappeared. It is destroyed. Where is it?" He said, "This is not an important question at all." How not important? It can be done with an atomic bomb. The most important thing is that it does not exist, and if it does not exist, then there will be nothing to do with an atomic bomb. And we buried him. Pardon, we buried him. Are you sure about this? Or maybe now in the hands of terrorists, as I would say, fears. This is according to the worst scenario. Here you need to act and think according to the worst scenario. We buried him, the vice president of the United States. That is, the University of Yale. That is, such a situation from which, in honor with dignity, it is impossible for a person who carries all this crap to go out. We say we buried him, well, and now, and what now? And now we need to talk to the Iranians to solve the issue. That is, we are now bombing Iran, dulling the war, that is, breaking the agreement with them, then approving the attack on Israel, and then joining this attack, bombing it. We will now come to the Iranians and say, well, help now to find this wound, that is, to find this uranium. Such naivety, this is Vance. Then, I repeat, from the American officials who are at the mercy of the military, no one has yet said that this operation was successful, and no one could tell him because now, in order not to just talk, but so to speak, based on some real facts, you need to get there to a large extent. Or get some irrefutable evidence, information about where the centrifuges, by the way, not only the uranium disappeared, but also the centrifuges with it. That is, everything that is necessary for further enrichment of uranium to the weapon state, everything has gone, by and large. Because Grossi stated that for 780 pounds, these unfortunate 440 kilograms of 60% of uranium, plus centrifuges, all of them disappeared. Moreover, they disappeared not only from one RDO object, but also from Fahan, which they did not make much emphasis on. They damaged everything from above, well, not damaged, but destroyed the power plant that powered the underground part of this object. So there too, it is not clear where it was done, and they also had secret objects that few people knew about at all. In short, the program disappeared. What to do now? Either go on a pilgrimage to the tyrants or land somewhere without taking a landing and climb into this fort, into this gorge, or into this crater. You will not understand, but the scandal is developing. This was in the state of yesterday evening. Today, in the morning, Donald Trump, he has already arrived in Europe, says that Israel sent agents, Mossad, or special forces to the Iranian nuclear facility Fordo. And these agents confirmed, that is, they penetrated there, confirmed the complete, I quote, complete destruction of the facility. He made a statement at the NATO summit, adding that Israel is preparing a report on the damage, and that, in his opinion, nothing could have been taken out of Ford because the United States acted quickly, very quickly. At least a week later, they began to make, first of all he himself, hints and almost an open statement that we will bomb. Thank you, he actually warned Iran that there would be this blow. Well, yes, it was not clear how many days, but since the threat followed, it must be acted quickly. And then he believes that the United States acted very quickly, so no one removed anything. Now, as Reuters reports, Israeli officials have declared to the local media that they know nothing about any of Israel's operations in Fordo after the attack.
удара.
Well, then there was a statement, that is, there is nowhere
Затем
to go, he needs support from his own, from the military,
появилось
no one
заявление:
wants to
деваться
say
некуда,
anything and
ему
does
надо
not want
поддержка
to.
из своих, из военных, никто ничего не хочет говорить. И правильно не хочет.
He said to his friend
Он
Bibi, help,
своему
I did
другу
it with
Биби:
you, confirm.
помоги.
And then the
Я
assessment of the
затеял вместе с
organization,
тобой,
which is roughly
подтвердить.
called either the
И тут появляется
Association or the
оценка
Commission
организации,
on Nuclear
которая
Energy of
называется то ли
Israel,
ассоциация,
appears.
то ли комиссия по ядерной энергии Израиля.
This is the one that is
Это та, которая
subordinate to
подчиняется
Netanyahu
самому Нетаньяху,
himself, who makes such a
который
witty
делает такое
statement that they believe
витиеватое
that judging by the
заявление,
nature of
что
the
они
blow, there should
считают,
be,
что,
in
судя по
theory, a
характеру
strong
удара,
damage.
там должен, по идее, быть нанесен сильный ущерб.
But again,
Но
this is
опять-таки
purely
это
such a
чисто такое
speculative reasoning that
конспиративное
maybe we are
рассуждение, что
doing
может
so,
быть
well,
где-то
it is
какой-то
already
сильный
given to
удар,
us. This was visually
так
stated.
визуально был нанесен.
Well, such a very
А
sweet
так,
statement,
очень слабенькое
especially
такое
since I
заявление, тем более,
understand that the
что
appointment of the head of this
что
commission
назначение
depends to a
руководителя этой
significant
комиссии
extent
зависит
on his
значительно
Netanyahu.
от своего Нетаньяху.
Therefore, as further quoted from the Axios
Поэтому,
edition, which has the
как дальше цитировало издание Axios, которое обладает, ну это, пожалуй, вот этот
most
корреспондент,
powerful
который
connections in the
обладает
government
самыми
and various
мощными
sensitive
связями
agencies and
в
departments of
правительстве
Israel.
и в различных, как говорят, sensitive агентствах и ведомствах Израиля. Так вот,
So
он
he
цитирует:
quotes
профессиональная
professional
оценка
assessment of the war
боевых
damage
повреждений требует
requires
времени,
time, emphasized the
подчеркнул
Israeli
израильский чиновник
officials,
Комитета
commenting on
израильского
all these statements.
заявления.
It is still too early to
Слишком
draw
рано делать
conclusions that
выводы,
are contained in the reports.
которые содержатся в отчетах.
Israeli
Израильские
special
спецслужбы
services have
пока
not
не
yet come to
пришли
any
к
final
каким-либо
conclusion,
окончательным
but we do not
выводам.
believe that there were
Но мы
any
не
mistakes in
считаем,
the
что в операции
operation.
были
There were no
какие-то
mistakes in
ошибки.
the
В
operation.
операции не
Everything
было
was done
ошибок. Все
perfectly.
было сделано идеально.
Scientists
Ученые,
may be
может быть,
miscalculated,
просчитались, неправильно
Well,
посчитали.
in
Ну и
general,
вообще
an unknown
неведомо,
space was there, an
неведомое
unknown
пространство
situation.
там было, ситуация
This
неведомая.
is from Hawk,
Это
an
ad hoc,
extraordinary situation
чрезвычайная
that cannot be
ситуация.
guaranteed
Поэтому нельзя давать
100%
стопроцентной
before it is
гарантии
carried out.
перед
But
тем,
we do
как
not have
действовать.
any signs that the
Но у нас
bombs
нет
for the
никаких
destruction
признаков
of
того,
bunkers
что
did not work.
бомбы для уничтожения бункеров не сработали. Они
They worked,
сработали.
they easily
Они
worked,
запросто
but they did not
сработали.
work
Но
when
они
it was
сработали не тогда,
necessary and
когда
not
надо
in the
было, и
place
в
when
том
it was
месте, когда надо было.
necessary.
Вот вам
Here is
и
the
ответ.
answer. Thus, what do we have
Таким
at the
образом,
moment?
что мы имеем на настоящий момент?
Two people, this is Trump, and completely
Два
subordinate and
человека.
dependent on.
Это Трамп и полностью подчиненный, зависящий от него
Him Hex said that the
Хексет
task was
заявили,
solved.
что
Netanyahu said
задача
nothing of
решена.
himself, but at the very beginning he
Нетаньяху
said that
от
only
себя ничего
America
не
could do
сказал.
it.
Ну, в самом начале он заявил, что только Америка может это сделать. Ну,
Netanyahu sang
во-первых,
incredible Deferam. Posters
невероятные
appeared on the
дифирамбы,
buildings of the
плакаты
Israeli
появились
houses. Thank you,
на
Mr. President,
зданиях
for your work,
израильских
everything as it
домов.
should be.
Спасибо, там, господин президент, за работу, все как надо.
But
Но
Netanyahu did not
Нетаньяху
confirm that
не
the object was destroyed. That is, two people, but Hext is clear to everyone, that is, only Trump remains.
остается один Трамп.
And what do we have from this now?
И
Let's
что мы
summarize the
из
results
этого
that have been
имеем
formed
теперь?
based on the
Давайте
results
подведем
of what
итоги,
Trump called the 12-day war.
которые сложились по результатам того, что Трамп назвал 12-дневной войной.
And let's see what the situation
Какая
is and what
ситуация,
solutions there are in this
в этой
situation.
ситуации
But first,
есть.
I want to answer one question.
Но сначала я хочу ответить на один вопрос. Вот
When I
когда
said in the
я
first
еще
hours of the war that
первые
if you are
часы
not
войны сказал,
100%
что
sure, do not get
если не
involved, do
уверен
not
на
start.
100%, не лезь, не начинай.
Then there was a statement, I think
Потом
it was said by
появилось
Wesley Clark,
высказывание,
the
по-моему,
former
это сказал
four-star
Уэсли Кларк,
commander-in-chief of
бывший
NATO
известный
troops in Europe.
бывший главнокомандующий объединенными войсками НАТО в
He said
Европе.
that if you do not know how the war will end, there is no
Закончится война,
strategy, do
если
not
не
start, do
начинать,
not
не
get
лезть
involved
в
in
эту
this
войну.
war. One of my
И
viewers
один
sent
из
me, but
зрителей
how was it
призвал, а
necessary to
как же
act?
надо было
He asks.
действовать, спрашивает он.
That is, I said that if
Я
there is no
сказал, что если
100%
нет
guarantee
100%
that this
гарантии,
uranium and everything
уран
related to the production
и
of a
все
nuclear
остальное
bomb will not
связанное
be
с
destroyed,
ядерной
it is
бомбой
not
не будет
necessary to
уничтожено, не
start.
надо
He
начинать.
asks, but how was it
А он
necessary
меня
to act?
спрашивает, а как надо было действовать?
You see, if I had all the
Понимаете,
information in
если
front of
бы
me
у
about
меня
military,
передо мной был
intelligence,
весь
and other
объем
opportunities that
информации
Israel and the
о
United
военных, разведывательных и других возможностях, которыми обладает Израиль и
States have
Соединенные
now,
Штаты
I would give
сейчас,
you points, I would
я
write
бы
down
по
how to do it.
пунктам расписал бы, как это надо делать.
I naturally
У
do
меня
not
этого,
have
естественно,
this.
нет.
That is, I
Я не
have only
знаю
those
те
information that
сведения,
one way or
которые
another came through
получились из
sources, open sources.
источники, открытые источники.
Open intelligence, as they
Да,
call it,
называют.
open
Открытые
intelligence sources.
разведывательные
Well, the
источники.
experience
Ну
that was
и
acquired during my
который был приобретен в ходе
Professional
профессиональной
life, so to speak. The most
жизни.
valuable experience in this sense I
Самый
got
ценный
in the
опыт
first
в этом
half of the
смысле я
1990s, when a
получил в
similar
первой половине
situation
90-х
here,
годов, когда аналогичная ситуация вот здесь с
with the
возможностью
possibility
распространения
of the spread of Russian nuclear
российских ядерных
weapons,
вооружений,
literally led to official
буквально
panic
приводило
in
в панику
Washington.
официальный
How was it necessary to
Вашингтон.
act?
Как надо
First, it
было
was
действовать?
necessary to determine
Первое. Надо
100%
было
whether you
определить,
can or
100% ты
cannot
можешь
destroy.
или не можешь уничтожить.
Can you
На
wait for a
100% да или можешь, да
100%
или нет. Если не
guarantee or
можешь,
not? If you
не
can't,
надо.
don't. As I
Просто
said,
не
don't.
надо. Вот
Look,
смотрите.
there was an international
Был
agreement
договор,
that was developed during the
подписанный
Obama
международный, который
administration.
был разработан во время администрации Обамы. Согласно
According to
которому
it, Iran was allowed to work with
Ирану
uranium,
разрешалось
enrich it. I don't remember how
работать
many.
с
I think
ураном,
there were about
обогащать
20,
его.
in
Я
short,
не помню
only
уже
for
каких,
peaceful
по-моему, там было до
purposes.
20, короче говоря, только в мирных целях. Его
It was signed,
подписали.
it was an
Второй
international
договор,
agreement, there was a whole group of
там целая
countries,
группа
a
стран,
separate
отдельный
European
Европейский
Union was
Союз
established.
участвовал. Он
It
прошел
went
через
through the
очень
procedure
долгий
of the
процесс
Bionic Nations
ратификации.
Organization. And
И
according to this
согласно этому
agreement, the
договору,
uranium, which was
тот
enriched
уран,
beyond
который
what
был
was provided
обогащен
by the
сверх того,
agreement,
что было
Iran gave.
предусмотрено по договору, Иран отдал.
There was a
Гранта
guarantee,
была
not a
определена такая
guarantee, there was a
гранта,
watchful eye
смотрящая
on
на
MAGATE, an organization for the Bionic Nations on
Организация
nuclear
при
energy.
Объединенных Нациях по атомной энергии.
And then through
А вот
MAGATE,
этот
this uranium was
МАГАТЭ, вот этот
transferred to
уран
other nuclear
передали
countries that
другим
turned it into uranium
ядерным
suitable
странам,
for
которые
peaceful use.
превратили его в уран пригодный для мирного использования. Часть из него
Some of it,
пошла.
in my opinion, even
По-моему,
Iran
Иран
somehow
даже
used it, but I'm
воспользовался, но
not sure
в этом
about
я не
that.
уверен.
That is, the
Вопрос был
question was
решен, по
solved, so
большому
to
счету.
speak. There was no panic, there was no reason.
Не было паники, оснований не было.
Then
Потом
comes
приходит
Trump
Трамп,
and he comes to mind. They say that
и
Netanyahu,
ему
who had an
приходит в
obsessive
голову, говорят,
idea that this
что
contract was bad,
Нетаньяху, у которого это была навязчивая идея, что этот договор это плохо, надо
should be
вообще
completely
запрещать
banned
полностью,
100%,
100%.
and he
И он
convinced Trump in
убедил
this.
в
Trump
этом
left this
Трампа.
contract.
Трамп вышел из этого договора.
That's it,
Все.
all barriers, all
Все
restrictions from
барьеры, все
Iran were
ограничения
removed, and he
с
began
Ираном
to enrich
сняты.
uranium in full.
И он начал обогащать уран по полной программе.
This was the end of
На
Trump's
этом
first
закончился,
term.
значит,
Now
первый
came
срок
the second term, and
Трампа.
Trump during the election
Теперь начался второй
campaign
срок.
said that we would solve
Трамп
this
в
issue.
предвыборной кампании говорил, что мы решим этот вопрос.
He
Начал
began to
решать,
solve it,
но
but now,
теперь,
so to speak, he has already taken the
товарищ,
position of
занял
Obama.
позицию
How could it be possible
Обамы.
to
Как
support
можно было
Obama's
Обама,
position? That
позицию
is, to
Обамы
allow the enrichment of
поддержать
uranium
в
for
разрешить
peaceful purposes.
обогащение урана в мирных целях.
He has completely
Он
taken
полностью занял
Netanyahu's
позицию
position.
Нетаньяху,
That is, to
полностью
completely ban Iran from
запретить
working with the enrichment
Ирану
of uranium.
с обогащением
Iran,
урана.
of course, has
Трамп
nothing
пошел
to
в
do with
коммунизм,
it, and these negotiations do not lead
и
to anything.
эти переговоры ни к чему не
Well,
приводят.
in the end, this led to the beginning of the blows from the side of
Но в
Israel,
конце
which
концов
was
это
later
привело
united with the
к
United
началу
States of
ударов со стороны
America.
Израиля, которые потом присоединили Соединенные Штаты
That
Америки. То
is,
есть, первое,
first, Trump could have returned to the
Трамп
agreement
мог
that was signed by
вернуться
the
к
international
договору, который
community
был
even
подписан
under Obama,
международным
and everything
сообществом
would be
еще при
fine.
Обаме. И все было бы нормально.
Iran now
Иран
said, let us
сейчас говорит,
develop the way
разрешили
we
нам
developed according to the
разрабатывать,
agreement in
разрабатывать в
2015, and everything will be
2022
fine.
2015 году, и все
But
будет
Trump and
нормально.
Netanyahu, they set the
Но
maximum
Трамп
tasks.
и Нетаньяху, они поставили максимальные
They then
задачи.
had a
Вот
100%
было у них
guarantee
такая
that they would
100%
achieve the
гарантия, что
task,
они
that they would
достигнут
force it.
задачи, что они
I don't know how they
заставят.
calculated
Не
them,
знаю,
how they
как они
calculated this
просчитывали,
bomb.
как они
They then had to
просчитывали
calculate
эту
through their
бомбу. Они всегда
specialists
должны
whether
были
these
через своих
bombs would be
специалистов
achieved or
просчитать,
not.
бомба достигнут цели или нет.
Do they have a
Получится ли
100%
эта
guarantee
гарантия
or
или нет.
not? That
Кстати,
is,
доводит
I
для
feel
этого, что
that
это
this
та
is the
ситуация, когда
situation
два
when two
некомпетентных в
incompetent
этом деле
politicians in this
человека,
matter made
политика,
very responsible
принимали
decisions,
очень ответственные решения,
which then led to the
которые
situation that we are now
привели к той
experiencing.
ситуации,
By the
которую
way,
мы
the
сейчас
precedent of
видим.
such a
Кстати,
situation was
вот
described by Henry
прецедент, что ли, подобной ситуации, он был описан
Kissinger in his
диалогически
book
в
My
России.
Years in the White House,
Мои
when he
годы в
describes how
Белом
the
доме,
Soviet
когда он
Union and the
описывает,
United
как
States held
Советский
talks
Союз и
about
США
limiting the
вели
strategic missile.
переговоры о ограничении ракет, стратегических ракет.
And there they
И там
counted
считалось,
how
что
many
шаг
mines
каждая
each
страна
country
может
could
сделать.
have, and the teams of
И не
negotiators could
могли
not come to a
команды
consensus on this issue.
переговорщиков прийти к консенсусу по этому
And
вопросу.
so
И
he
вот
says,
они
we then,
тогда
I came to
на
Moscow, we
Верховном
sat down from
совете директоров
Brezhnev and
и
began
начали
to
решать
solve
этот
this
вопрос.
issue.
И он пишет,
And he writes,
но
neither he
ни
nor I had any
они не
idea what
имели,
we
о
were talking
чем мы
about here.
говорим
We didn't have
здесь.
it at all.
Вообще не имели.
Well, what about the responsible person? They inflated the cheeks and that and the other. Well, they inflated and something was decided, something was drawn there. And so he says it was an example of what too, but he didn't say a moron. He said two completely incompetent people made a decision on the issue from which the fate of the world depended. In this case, it was the same. That is, here is the first answer. How was it necessary to act? It was necessary to act through the return to the 2015 agreement. And that's it, and everything would be fine. Second, how was Trump supposed to act? He was supposed to have a qualified intelligence community. He was supposed to put a professional, not Tutsi Gabbard, who has no idea about all this in the head of his qualified person. And listen to him, not Netanyahu, because Netanyahu has his own, so to speak, political life, his own agenda. And since Trump himself does not really understand anything in this matter, he put the morons like the aristocrats. Well, to put it simply, he's a moron. Here he has no one to ask. There he says to Netanyahu, who for some reason he believes, I don't know why, because she is convincing, she says beautifully and presses Mr. President, only you can, you are the savior of all humanity. He has already been bitten. He is such a simple person for understanding Trump. I mean, he was bitten in NATO, in which today he was saying deferemb, Netanyahu saying deferemb to him. That's how it all led to this. Next, good, the first option, it was necessary to return to the situation of 2015. The second, these strikes have already begun. I fixed this problem and said that in this situation it is necessary to continue bombing Israel. America, do not get there. Israel had to continue to destroy the launchers and missiles of Iran because it turned out that it was the main active force of Iran, and it worked quite successfully. Then I will tell you about the results of the military actions from both sides. They are not covered by Shariakov in mass media today, almost nowhere. So it was necessary to continue bombing, to knock out everything, to knock out the anti-aircraft and anti-missile systems. The sky was open. It was necessary to bomb further and bring to that situation and offer negotiations, and then bring to the situation when Ayatollah and all this leadership said, well, that's it, let's go. And then it was already required, because Iran was ready for negotiations within the framework of the conditions of 2015 at any minute. But the United States and Israel, Trump and Netanyahu, it was necessary to prohibit everything at all. Well, bomb these military facilities to the end and then sit down where to go. It would not be easy, given what we know about the effectiveness of Iranian missiles. That is, in Israel there would be a lot of defeats, so to speak, all kinds of objects, there would be losses among people. Option, that is, it was necessary to do it in a massed way, a long one, but perhaps it would take a month. Although some experts say that in a month, if the Iranians fired like this, and with those rockets that they began to fire more and more, they would have turned many cities of Israel into ruins. So this is the second option, which is the second possibility. To bomb, to destroy this military and missile potential of Iran in general, and then negotiations. There is nowhere to go, and this matter is to be completed. But they chose the worst option. That is, too, out of the unreliable question here you ask, there was nothing to climb there at all. It was necessary to re-sign the 2015 agreement, and that's it. But they already got into this business. Here are two options for you, but they chose the worst, as a result of which, as I said, Samuels, we buried him. Are you sure you buried him? Who will see him now will testify there. And the unknown is the most terrible thing, gentlemen, now, because it turns out what I told you. This is uranium, and potentially this is a bomb. Because with centrifuges, to bring it up to 90–95% of uranium weapons is not a problem. A few months, and that's it. And the uranium bomb, Iranian trace, because the explosion will leave an Iranian trace, but in the unknown hands. Iran can now say we do not know where it all went and so on.
Сказали, мы не знаем, куда это все делось.
And this is the most terrible thing because it destroys the containment system.
Разрушает систему сдерживания. Теперь,
Now let's see what we mean now. In the course of the war from the side of Iran, they had very effective missiles. Moreover, they had an old one made in the
у них
2000s.
оказались очень эффективные ракеты. Причем у них было старье, сделано в нулевые годы.
And there were rockets that were made over the last 2 years. It turned out that these are the rockets that pierce all these domes.
Оказалось, что это ракеты, которые пробивают вот эти все купола.
And the Arrow 2 and the Arrow 3 and the Iron Dome and forgive me, David.
Железный купол и прощу доверие.
And among them there are unique rockets. It is believed that by the number of medium-range missiles, Iran, perhaps, is ahead of any other country in the world.
Любую другую страну мира.
And among them there are unique rockets. These are rockets with dividing head parts.
С разделяющимися головными частями. То есть
That is,
ракеты
these are not
именно
cassette warheads, but these are really 5, 6 separate head parts that have so far been only on intercontinental ballistic missiles.
континентальных баллистических ракетах.
Now they are also intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they have made the most destructive strikes on the cities, on the residential areas.
Наносили удары по городам, по жилым кварталам.
Iran, Ukraine does not give its allies, and Ukraine sits, yawing at cities, wiping off the face of the earth, and Ukraine cannot respond.
С лица земли. А Украина ответить не может.
Iran did not care about the whole thing because it had these missiles. It had them in the amount that it could hit the cities of Israel in a month.
Образом бить по городам Израиля в течение
And
месяца.
independent analysts say that some Israeli cities would look like, well, like Stalingrad in 1942, unfortunately.
Как, ну так, примерно как Сталинград в 1942 году, к сожалению.
And it turned out to be unexpected. Why did this become possible? Because again, analysts, I don't know if Israel had another way out, another strategy, but
Был ли у Израиля другой выход, другая стратегия, но в отличие
unlike
от
Iran, where one city is located at a distance from the other, Israel is an urbanized state. There, the cities are very close to the
урбанизированное государство. Там города очень близко населены.
settlements, and therefore it is much easier to get there. So this is the first thing that showed, and so by and large
Что
this
показало? Итак, по большому счету, вот это именно этот
element,
элемент,
this factor
именно
played a
этот фактор
role in the fact that Trump hastened to
сыграл на
turn
то,
and end this
что
war
Трамп
in 12 days.
поспешил свернуть и закончить эту войну за 12 дней.
Apparently, Netanyahu asked him, because Iran, he could continue it, I repeat, for at least a
Продолжать
month.
его, я повторяю, там, в течение месяца это как минимум.
The next result, an intermediate result of this 12-day war. Americans, Trump administration will now have to reconsider their plans to create an iron, no, a gold dome.
Создание железного, нет, золотого купола.
Trump is all gold. For example, he decided to create an iron Israeli dome gold here.
Решил создать золотой здесь.
So it is clear, a completely clear message of the so-called 12-day war that it is necessary to leave these stupid plans in a distant box
Куда-нибудь в дальний ящик задвинуть и больше
and no longer return to them, because Nixon and Kissinger have come to the conclusion that it is impossible to completely close their territory.
территорию, во-первых, это невозможно.
And secondly, this means to call the enemy for a preventive blow, because he will think, now you will create this 100% defense, God forbid, and then you will think that you are free, safe from the second.
Будешь считать, что ты свободен, безопасен.
Counterattack so you can strike the first. And so, having created such a dome and saying that it is 100%, you can provoke the enemy to make a preventive blow on you until you do.
Он нанес на тебе, по тебе превентивный удар, пока ты
Not carry this first blow yourself. That is, it is necessary to tie with these domes, with those billions that Trump administration, under the leadership of Hexit, plans to
непосредственно Хексета,
spend on this matter. Then the system. Big problems with the PVO were found, with the missiles normal, with the PVO a problem.
обнаружились. С ракетами нормально, с ПВО проблемы.
And then the Russian analysts say that if Iran signed such a contract with Russia as Russia signed with North Korea, then we would build such a defense system for them.
Вот тогда бы мы им построили такую систему
What
обороны.
defense system did they build for them? The entire defense system of Iran is a Russian system, and they put there everything new they
И
could.
они поставили туда все
The last 2 years, 1924-1925, they put S-500. There is no better system, and even in Russia you can count on your fingers. They gave Iran, that is, the complete failure of the Iranian air defense system. This proves that Russia, against modern military means which are available in the West, in NATO, Russia is naked, and you can do with it by and large anything. The same B-2 raids, Russia is open to them. I remember one of them, they were talking in Solovino-Pometa, but we, under Moscow, such and such a PVO system, we would have closed the whole Iran. This is all nonsense. This is a chatterbox of Solovino-Pometa. That is, Russia has a big system, a big problem with the PVO system. A black mark, and Russia is not covered from the sky. Well, we probably guessed about it when Ukrainian UAVs flew thousands of kilometers deep into the Russian territory and bombed their very valuable military and near-military objects. Then the Russian analysts, propagandists said that they would have fixed the flying wing of these B-2s with 125 fighters of the 5th generation of the 4th generation. That is, there were still F-35s flying there who covered all this mess. We would have detected it all. Well, why didn't we detect it? We would have detected it, we would have done it. We couldn't, we didn't see it, we didn't hear it. As it turned out, this is what the Chief General of the United Committee of the Chief Staff said, the Israeli PVO systems, which have not yet been touched. That is, a significant part was knocked out, and what was left, they said, they did not see us. And these F-35s, which flew ahead with the wave, they were still hitting just in case.
Вот то ли в этом году, то ли в следующем начнется развертывание, вернее, принятие на commission будет принятие.
Destroy the last one, and also this year or next, the commission will start accepting the new bomber B-21, which, as the military analysts say, its invisibility is about 21% higher than the current B-2, but God forbid. Then there was a big problem in Iran, the Mossad. By the way, it must be said that this war showed an unparalleled increased role of intelligence and special services in the modern war. That is, it is difficult to say who played a greater role, who played a smaller role. Israeli special services created from their agency inside Iran whole armed groups, not one, not two, not three, whole armed groups, which could destabilize the regime from the inside, which could launch drones and so on. And now the question arises, is it possible to change the regime in the current conditions? Is it possible to turn things around? Well, then I will tell you about it. But in principle, if the course is taken to change the regime, then these groups will be able to play a very important role in this matter. That is, this is a completely new feature in the history of the development of wars, which has inevitably raised the role of special services. Then, but it must be said that the fifth column, Iranian counterintelligence and other special services, took quite fast and tough measures, and the fifth column was very hard in the course of several days. Then, there was a great hope that 80% of Iranians hated this regime and would go out with flowers and so on, but it turned out not to be the case. The people started a tendency, it was obvious, to unite around the flag. Yes, Iranians are against it, they hate this regime, but they are against this regime being replaced by the United States and Israel by bombing of the same Tigran. Like, we can handle it ourselves, but we don't need such external support. Another important point is that the pain threshold of the Iranian population was much higher.
гораздо
That
большее
is, the
количество
Iranians were ready to
операций
suffer much more
провели
losses in the living
значительно большие
force among
потери,
civilians in terms of destruction of objects than Israel.
даже среди гражданского населения в плане разрушения объектов, чем
And this is
Израиль.
normal because it
И это
applies not
закономерно.
only to this
Это
war.
касается не только этого
Dictatorial
войны.
regimes, they
Диктаторские
always do not
режимы
regret their own,
всегда
since they regret their
не жалеют
democratic
своих, так
countries.
как жалеют своих демократических странах.
Russia also
Раша это
sees
очень
this.
видно.
That's why
Вот
Russia
почему
always
Раша
fights with
всегда
meat,
воюет
because the
мясом.
country is like this,
Это
meat is not a
старое,
pity.
мясо не жалко.
Well, and also look,
Ну
all
и
this
еще,
together led to
кстати,
the
вот
fact
это
that it
все
was
вместе
unexpected.
привело к
It
тому,
is
что
believed that in any case for the
неожиданно
administration of the
считается
United
захватывающей для
States,
администрации Соединенных
that
Штатов
resistance that
после
Iran
победы,
had
которую
turned out to
одержал
be
Иран,
unexpected and
оказалась
almost,
большая
well, unexpected on the verge of
и
shock,
чуть
in a
ли
shock degree of surprise.
неожиданным на грани шока, в шоковой степени неожиданной.
That is, again,
Хотя
where
никто
is
не
it, the
ожидает такой
notorious
скорой оперативной
intelligence that must
информации
assess
после
all
этого.
this? And it does not
А
exist, I
нету,
answer you, because as for the
отвечаю,
Middle
потому
East,
что
this crew does
часть
not
Ближнего
work there
Востока тут там
particularly.
особенно не работает.
It receives all the
Все,
information from
все
its friendly special
сведения
services
получает
of
от
Israel.
своих
Well, there is an
дружественных
opportunity to
спецслужб
deliver the
Израиля.
information
Ну а
correctly.
там появляется возможность на правильной поставке информации. Это еще
This was
обращаю
also
на это
noticed
внимание
since the
современных
times of the storm
пускай,
in the desert, when
когда
there was an
шло
investigation in the Senate. How so?
расследование в Сенате, как так.
They came in,
Со
fought,
флота
spent a
военных
lot of money, and where is the
потратили
means of mass
огромные
destruction?
средства
But since then,
массового
apparently, not much
уничтожения.
has
Но с
changed.
тех пор, видимо, по большому счету немного изменилось.
Results
Результаты
from
со стороны
Israel,
Израиля.
brilliant strike
Блестящий
potential of
ударный
aviation.
потенциал
Everything is
авиации.
as it should be.
Все как
Aviation
надо.
is one of the best in the
Авиация
world, maybe the
одна из
second
лучших
after the
в мире,
United
вторая
States in
после Соединенных
America.
Штатов Америки.
But
Но
unexpected gaps
неожиданно
in air
провел
defense.
противовоздушное
It was
оборудование.
believed that all these
Эти
domes were
дела
considered to
считались
be up to
образцами чуда
100%.
техники,
Miracles,
науки.
technology, science. It
Оказывается,
turns out that the
средства
means of
оборонения
attack are
всегда
always ahead of the
превосходили,
means of defense in their
опережали
development.
средства защиты.
Therefore, it should never be completely
Поэтому
calculated for its PVO-PRO
100%
system.
никогда полностью просчитывать не стоит.
Then the
Затем
problem of strategic Israel is
проблема
the high urbanization of the
стратегического
country.
Израиля — это высокая урбанизация страны. Поэтому
Therefore, Iran hit
города
cities and pay
необыкновенно
attention no one resented by and large in the world. Ukraine is not allowed to hit cities on the Russian side, but it hit.
А он бил. И в результате
As a
вот
result,
этой
this was his
тактики
tactic that led to the fact that Washington decided that this
Вашингтоне
war
решили, что
must be
надо
turned
войну
over in 12
заканчивать через
days.
12 дней.
It would be necessary to think
Надо было
about this
подумать.
issue in Kiev, but for this you need to have,
Поэтому
like Iran, more than 2,000.
более 2000. Некоторые
Some
говорят,
say up to
что
3,000, and among them there are many new missiles. The growing role of intelligence, it was a great plus for
растущая роль
Israel too.
разведки — это большой очень плюс для Израиля
Carry
тоже.
out military
Проведение
operations,
военных
so an
операций.
intermediate result of the war, the Iran nuclear program was.
Итак, промежуточный итог войны. Ядерная программа Ирана
Not
не
destroyed, in any
уничтожена.
case there is no evidence
В
against
данном
it.
случае нет никаких доказательств об обратном.
All serious specialists, professionals who sit in military
С этим
agencies and
согласны
intelligence agencies
все
agree with
серьезные
this.
специалисты, профессионалы, которые сидят в военных ведомствах и в разведывательных агентствах.
In general, serious
С этим,
analysts do not argue about
в
this.
общем-то,
Enriched.
не спорят и серьезные аналитики. Обогащенный
Uranium
уран
and centrifuge are in the hands of the
находится в
unknown.
неизвестных
And,
руках.
as I explained to
И
you,
как
this
вам
is the
я
most terrible
объяснял,
situation
это
that has
самая
been
страшная
observed for the last
ситуация,
time since the
которая
early
наблюдалась последний
90s.
раз в начале 90-х годов. Потому что
Because holding
сдерживание
back does
не
not work,
работает.
unknown people can now use
Неизвестные
such a
люди
device,
могут
making
теперь
strikes anywhere,
использовать
knowing that
такое
no one
устройство,
knows that it is them.
нанося удары где угодно, зная, что никто не знает, что это они. Все
Everyone will think
Иран
that this is
наносит
Iran, but they
удар по
will strike on Iran,
их это
let's say,
волнует.
whether they are concerned or not. This is a very bad situation.
Это очень плохая ситуация.
Next, Iran. Iran, of
Далее.
course, suffered a lot. Aviation suffered very large losses. The air defense system, anti-missile
Очень
defense.
большие потери понесла авиация, система противовоздушной, противоракетной обороны.
Well,
Ну,
most
а самое
importantly,
главное,
Iran turned out
оказался
to be, in a way, so
фактически это
external.
внешне.
I emphasize external because there is a lot of work
Внешне.
going on
За
behind the
кулисами там
scenes, I am
ведется
sure of
большая
it.
работа, я в этом уверен.
in the support of Iran from the other sides of the Cesla. That is, the question of its security for the regime is extremely acute. And Trump threatened that you have a lot of objects that we can bomb, and every time it will be easier and easier to do. But that situation, if you want to understand the situation and what you can do, you need to understand the opponents. I put myself in the place of Ayatollah. In 2015, Ayatollah is already in his prime age. But there is a prime minister or some chief of staff. In 2015, they signed a contract with the Americans with all international governments. A man came who does not understand anything in this matter at all, a populist. He took it all and then began to pressure. Force sign what other countries did not force to sign. That is, a complete refusal of working with Iran. Well, you cannot believe it. Once he came out of this agreement, then he cut off the negotiations, then he approved the strikes of Israel against Iran, and then he joined these strikes himself. Here are 4 of Trump's feats, which, in quotes of course, he made according to the Iranian leadership. And what to do, you need to make a decision, and very quickly. And here are the most dangerous ways to solve the issue of Iran's security. This is to test nuclear weapons in the next few months by an underground explosion. So Trump laughed. Someone wrote something about Medvedev, this Medvedev. Was not written by himself, it was written for him. It was a signal from a friend of Trump by the name of Putin, who Trump in the same answer said to Medvedev. He opposed Putin, a fool of Medvedev. Putin is smart, that's why he is the president. This president is a smart friend and sends this message. If Tulsi Gabbard did not understand it, I will bring her information, let her report to President Trump, otherwise he does not know completely what the real situation is. And the disappearance of uranium, the disappearance of centrifuge, the Iranians confirmed that no, Medvedev signed this letter and this is the fastest way now for Iran to blow up, to conduct underground tests in a few months, which will be conducted by the North Koreans, the Russians. The Russians worked there for a very, very long time, for many years, helping to enrich uranium. They told me, according to the unconfirmed data, well, there should probably be a couple of dozen to clean up. But somewhere in the middle of the 2000s, they told me that almost 80% of the wealth was brought by Russian specialists who worked in Iran on the nuclear program. In short, this is the biggest danger, and it solves everything. And it completely turns the situation in the Middle East upside down, as you understand. It will be the defeat of Israel, it will be the defeat of the United States of America, it will be the destruction of the nuclear arms agreement. And this will be followed by a chain reaction of Saudi Arabia. Other countries will hurry to purchase the same. I think that this, unfortunately, is a very real option. The paths are open. I do not see any particular obstacles along the way. I mean the naive president of the United States who thinks that now he will call Putin and fix everything in the course of a good conversation. Or another naive vice president of the Yale University, Vance, who thinks that now he will contact the Iranian leadership and tell them everything. Where is Iran? What is it? A lot of good things have been done, in quotes, by the American administration for Iran so that they can now take and tell everything. Therefore, unfortunately, this is a very, very alarming situation. And at the same time, it is also necessary to keep in mind, again, this gap between how Trump understands his attitude towards Putin and how the propaganda organs of Putin relate to Trump.
относится к Трампу,
Now, Trump's
которому
family is called the most
сейчас
corrupt
Трамп
family in the world,
называют
maybe even
самым
in history.
коррумпированным
They say that he
семейством
uses his
в
position,
мире,
his
может, и
family,
в истории. Говорят, что вот он использует свою должность, его семейство, для того, чтобы стать самым
in order to
богатым
become the richest,
и
well, to
добиться
achieve a trillion of this
триллиона
amount.
вот этой суммы.
Well, and they
Но это
believe that
считается
these M
как
coins
вот
that he
эти
launched are included there.
коины,
And the most
которые он
important
запустил.
thing is that he makes
А
a
самое
decision, in
главное,
other
что он
words,
принимает
makes, declares to
решение,
the whole world
делает,
some
оглашает на весь мир некоторые
things, his
вещи,
opinion
свои
or his
мнения,
plans
свои
in such a
планы,
way
которые
as to
могут
shake
закрывать
up the
потребительские
market.
рынки.
The markets
Рынки
rise and
взлетают по
fall,
праву,
and this
а
is
эти
done,
делаются
allegedly, by
якобы
billions.
миллиарды
That is,
этим,
he uses his
используя
position
должность
for his
своих
mercantile purposes.
меркантильных
These are
целей.
Putin's
Это вот
rations, so to
гражданские,
speak, that accelerate this
путинские
topic of
огонёки,
Trump,
так сказать,
Putin's friend, with whom he
разгоняет эту
consults
тему.
and calls.
У Трампа, значит, вот друг Путин, с которым он советуется и ему звонит.
But I must say that the nuclear bomb in
Надо
Iran
также
is
сказать,
not the
что
worst
ядерная
option
бомба у
yet.
Ирана – это еще не самый худший
That
вариант.
is, here the
То есть путь
deterrence will work,
сдерживания
because
по
it is
ядерной
clear
бомбе
that in
можно.
Iran, if it is used, then it is
Потому
Iran's
что ясно, что
fault,
Ирана,
then it is the
если он
answer to
поменяется,
Iran,
значит,
to the
генерал Иран
Iranian
даст
leadership.
ответ по Ирану, иранскому руководству.
Ayatollah, despite his old
Аятолла,
age, he wants to
несмотря на
live.
преклонный
In
возраст,
general,
он
this
хочет
is the
жить.
essence
Вот в
of
чем
restraint.
заключается суть сдерживания.
But if it is in the
А вот
hands of the North
если
Koreans, this
это
crazy Kim
рука
and he in the
северокорейца,
Iranian
этого
centrifuges,
безбашенного Кима, и он на иранских центрифугах
somewhere in the mountains will now disperse this uranium and make a bomb, and somewhere it will
будет
explode in
держать
South
по Южной
Korea, and then it will become
Корее, а
Iranian,
следом
and he has
садится
nothing to do with it.
иранский, а он-то и ни при
And if
чем.
it's not Kim, it's not a state at all,
А
like
если
some
Ким,
Al-Qaeda.
государство,
Or
вообще
if there is a
какая-нибудь
change of
Аль-Каида.
regime, civil
Или
war,
если
if what
пойдет
happened in
дальше
Iraq
смена
after
режима,
Saddam Hussein's
гражданская война,
overthrow.
если в Иране произойдет то, что происходило в Ираке после свержения Саддама
When
Хусейна,
ISIS or
когда
ISIS was formed on the
в
basis of his
основе его
Ba'ath Party and officer
генеральского и
corps,
офицерского корпуса возник ISIS
then there are
и КИМ.
terrorist groups, even prepared to take
Идут
Al-Qaeda if
террористические группировки вам, пожалуйста. Причем подготовленные не в пример даже той же Аль-Каиде взять, если их
their bones
искать
are made of
основной курс,
alquids, it is a
это вообще
terrible force.
страшная
This is the
цена.
worst option, and it
Вот
is
это
not
самый худший
excluded.
вариант.
In this
Но
case,
если
we
и он, по большому счету, не исключен. И в данном случае мы должны
have to
просчитывать
calculate the worst
самый
option,
худший
and here it
вариант. А
is.
вот
And
это
if this
он есть.
happens, then the two main
Если это
culprits of
произойдет, то двумя главными виновниками этого
this will be the
произойдет
two horsemen I talked about,
два
Trump and
всадника, о которых я
Netanyahu.
говорил.
Who will do it so
Трамп
that
и
this does not
Нетаньяху.
happen? The United States will try to
Что
negotiate
делать,
with
чтобы этого не
Iran.
произошло? США попробуют договориться с Ираном.
But the problem
Вот
is that in
проблема в
Iran,
том,
as
что в
I have
Иране,
just
как я
told
только
you,
что
there is
сказал,
no trust in
доверия к
Trump and his
его администрации
administration.
нет никакой. Вот
Here are
сидит
4
Герман
points that
Зел,
Trump
сидит
has
во главе
made,
Трампа,
which completely
который
deprive
полностью
this
лишает его
administration of
администрацию
any trust from Iran.
какого-то доверия со стороны Ирана.
Of course, they are
Они,
clear,
конечно,
this is an
понятно,
aggressive regime with an
зверский режим,
inhuman Iranian face, I mean.
с нечеловеческим лицом, иранский, я имею в виду.
But in order to make a deal, it is
Но
necessary
для
to
того, чтобы
somehow make a
договориться,
deal
надо
with both human
так,
and
чтобы два
inhuman. But you have to make a deal with him,
человеческих
and you have to make him
человеческих, но
believe
надо
you
с ним
so that he
договариваться, и
wants to
надо,
make a
чтобы он
deal
тебе
with you.
поверил, чтобы захотел с тобой договориться.
And here is what is
Так вот,
now.
что
When I
сейчас,
first raised this topic with the
когда
first
я
strikes from the Israeli
впервые
aviation
сказал,
against
поднял эту
Iran,
тему,
this topic
первой
of mass
глобальной
media
израильской
did not
авиации
even
по
rise.
Ирану, эта тема в средствах массовой информации даже не поднималась.
Now I
Сейчас
am opening
поднимается
today
только
Foreign Affairs.
Foreign
This is
Affairs.
probably the
Это
number
самая
one
главная
journal in the field of
журнал
foreign
внешней
policy, an
политики,
expert
экспертный
journal in the
журнал.
world.
И
And
там
there
он
it is clogged with articles titled
забит
by
статьями
specialists from the most
самыми
famous
самыми
analytical centers in the
титулованными
world, the
специалистами из
Western
самых
world.
известнейших мозговых центров, аналитических центров мира, западного мира.
And so this question is
И
discussed.
вот
What to do
обсуждается
in
этот
this
вопрос, что
situation?
делать
An
в
article
этой
appears
ситуации.
today in which it is
Статья
said that it will be good in.
появляется, в которой говорится, что будет хорошо
The
в
current
сложившейся
situation, it will be
ситуации,
good if
это будет
Iran
хорошо,
acquires a nuclear
если
bomb.
бомбу
No more,
атомную
no less.
приобретет
It was
Иран.
unthinkable to read such a thing in this
Больше не
magazine a
меньше. Вот
week
такое
ago, 2 weeks
почитать
ago.
в этом журнале еще неделю назад, 2 недели было немыслимо.
Now it is
Теперь
seriously
серьезно обсуждают,
discussed because it will
потому что
balance the Middle
это
East.
сбалансирует
Because there is now one
Значит,
country,
с одной
Israel,
стороны,
with a nuclear bomb,
Израиль
and you
с
see what it
атомной
is
бомбой.
doing.
И вот вы видите, что она вытворяет.
I repeat, American experts from
Повторяю,
leading
там
centers
причем
right
американские
there.
специалисты
So let Iran have a
из
bomb, it will
ведущих
balance the
центров.
situation in the
Так
middle.
вот, значит, пусть у Ирана будет бомба, это сбалансирует ситуацию на Ближнем Востоке, а в
East,
ядерной
and in the
энергетике
nuclear
главная
world the
роль
main balance,
используется
so that one nuclear
бомба
bomb in
атомного
one
подводного
state is
государства
equal
была
to the
выбрана, потому
nuclear
что это
bomb of
была
another
атомной
state.
бомбой другого
By the
государства.
way, this is
Это,
what
кстати,
moved
вот
those employees who
именно
worked on the
тех
Martin Hetkin project, creating a nuclear
сотрудников,
bomb in the
которые
United
работали над
States in the
Хэтчем
1940s.
проектом, создавая атомную бомбу в Соединенных Штатах в 40-е
Having
годы.
come to this
И
conclusion,
придя
they
к этому
transferred the
выводу, они
information to the
передали
Soviet
информацию
Union.
в Советский Союз.
Now the new, so to speak,
Вот сейчас
Pont
вот
Corvo and
новый
Rosenberg are now thinking about the
Понте-Корво,
fact
так
that it
сказать,
is
и
necessary
Розенберги
to
сейчас
give or give
размышляют о
Iran
том,
to
что
produce
надо
this nuclear bomb.
дать Ирану произвести эту атомную
Because
бомбу.
this is stability, it will be a
Потому что
better
это
situation than it is
стабильность.
now,
Это
they
будет лучшая
say,
ситуация,
after the
чем она
US
есть
strike on
сейчас,
Iran's
говорят они,
nuclear
после
facilities.
нанесения американских же ударов по ядерным объектам
What
Ирана.
do you need to do? This is a different article, a
Теперь,
short story, a flight
что
of
нужно
thought, the
делать? Другая
newest.
статья уже. Я вам кратко рассказываю. Полет мысли новейший.
If you take a course to
Значит,
force
если
Iran to give up on
взять
the
курс на
nuclear
то,
bomb, what
чтобы
do you need?
заставить
On the
Иран
one hand, you
отказаться
need
от
to
атомной
scare it that
бомбы,
if you do
то
not give up,
с
then
другой
we will
стороны,
do
нужно его
something that we
внутрь.
have not
Если мы
done yet.
окажемся, то мы такое сделаем, чего еще не делали.
Yes, Trump proved that this can
Да,
be
Трамп
done.
показал, что
Yes, there
может
is such an
сделать.
opportunity.
Да,
The
такая
sky is
возможность есть.
open.
Небо
B-2 is
открыто.
flying. They are
П-2
flying very
летают. Очень
effectively.
эффективно
These
летают.
bombs are still there,
П-3
but now they are not
еще слабо.
needed, but
Кстати
there
говоря,
are
и нужнее,
objects.
но зато есть объекты.
They have
Есть
90%. The
90%
Iranians have an
в
island in the
Персидском
Persian
заливе
Gulf.
остров, там
90% of their oil
90% находится
processing complex is
всего
there.
их нефтеперерабатывающего комплекса.
Great goals, bang, and that's
Прекрасные
it. And no,
цели.
it will be bad
Так,
for the
и
West,
все,
but it will
и
be
конец
unbearable for
атомной
Iran.
бомбы. Но Ирану будет невыносимо.
That
То есть
is, Trump scared, but the
напугал.
second they
И
say the
второй
Trump
вариант,
administration must give
администрация Трампа
guarantees to
должна
Iran that if
дать
you do not
гарантии
produce an atomic
Ирану,
bomb, we
что
give you
если ты не
guarantees, and
будешь
that's it, and
производить атомную бомбу, мы тебе даем гарантии, и все, и ты закрыт,
you're closed, you live
живешь
happily,
и
you develop,
оставайся.
you trade, as
Торгуй,
Trump
как говорит
says.
Трамп.
Well,
То есть,
gentlemen,
имеется
excuse me
в виду,
again, after
эти
4
4
half-tricks of
подвига
Trump.
Трампа в отношении Ирана вот сейчас последних. А если мы тут еще будем учитывать
Relation
Украину,
to Iran, now the last
которые
ones.
дали
And if we still take
гарантии,
into account Ukraine,
и
which gave
которые сейчас
guarantees and which now, here they are, disappeared from the
исчезли
White
с
House.
сайта Белого дома.
And now the
И
American
теперь американская
administration will come to
администрация
Kayat
придет
Ali
к
and
Кайят
say,
Али и
we will
скажет, мы
give
вам
you a
дадим гарантии. Он
guarantee.
скажет,
He
это
will
такой,
say,
как
this is what
Украина
Ukraine
дала.
was given,
И
and
все.
that's it.
То есть
That is, the
аргумент
argument does
не
not work.
работает, не
This
работает
option does
этот
not
вариант,
work,
как
no
ни
matter how you
крути.
twist it.
В любом случае,
In any case, this is how people who are against the
чем
fact that
которые
Iran has an
говорят
atomic bomb
против
are
того, чтобы атомная
emphasized.
бомба
They
была
say that the
в Иране,
administration must give a
говорят, что
reliable guarantee to
администрация должна
Iran
дать
and its
надежные
security.
гарантии Ирану его безопасности. Это
This is
ключ
the
к
key to the
противодействию
counteraction by the
ядерным
nuclear
амбициям Ирана.
ambitions of
И
Tehran.
доверие к
But there
Трампу
is no
будет
trust in
потом
Trump.
еще вот
And there is
сила
another
Украины,
side of
которая
Ukraine, which is
является
a clear
ярким
example
примером
of
того,
what these
чего
Western
стоят эти
guarantees are
западные
worth.
гарантии. Поэтому ключ к
Therefore, the
безопасному
key to the
статусу
irreplaceable
Ирана,
status of
это
Iran, if
если
they want to
захотят
negotiate
все-таки
with
договориться с
Tehran and
Ираном
convince
и
him in
убеждать его в
guarantees,
гарантиях,
lies through the
это через
security of
обеспечение
Ukraine.
безопасности Украины.
I think that this must be
Я думаю, что
taken
это
into account,
нужно иметь в виду
Ukrainian
украинской
diplomacy, and work with the
дипломатии,
corresponding Western governments
поработать
in
с
Europe.
соответствующими западными правительствами в Европе, поднять опять
Again, the
вопрос
issue of
обеспечения
ensuring the security of
безопасности
Ukraine
Украины
and the
и
guarantee that it
гарантии,
still has a
задействовать ее
guarantee.
гарантии все-таки.
Because
Потому
if
что
the
если
West and the
Запад,
United
Соединенные
States do
Штаты
not prove
не
that they are
докажут,
able
что
to
они
guarantee
способны
Tigran,
надежно
then he will
гарантировать
have an
Иран,
atomic
то у
bomb
него
and
будет
soon enough.
атомная бомба и достаточно скоро.
That's the
Вот такая
situation. That
ситуация.
is, Ukraine
То
is
есть
on the
Украина
advanced
выходит
scene
на
with the
авансцену
Budapest Memorandum,
с
which many
Будапештским
often write to
меморандумом,
me.
которые многие, вот мне часто
Why
пишут,
don't you
что
raise the issue of the
не поднимаете
Budapest
вопрос
Memorandum?
этого
Yes, because it has been
меморандума.
useless
Да потому
until
что его до
recently.
последнего
It is a
времени
waste of
не
time and
доработали.
distraction of attention to the
Потому что
object
атомная
that has
бомба
not
это
touched
действительно
anyone in the
объект,
West.
который никого не трогал на
And
Западе.
now it is
А вот
touching, it is
сейчас
obliged to
он
touch.
тронет.
And now it is
Понятно?
necessary to
Вот
make the
сейчас
appropriate statement to the Ministry of
нельзя
Ukraine on
сделать
this issue.
соответствующее заявление МИД Украине по этому вопросу.
Well, finally, the third way can be
Третье,
done in the current
что можно
situation.
сделать
I
в
believe that
сложившейся
there are two
ситуации,
global
если я
issues here.
считаю, что вообще по большому счету два глобально. Первый.
First, Iran will produce
Иран в
nuclear
течение ближайших
explosions in the
месяцев
coming
производит
months, and
ядерный
that's it.
взрыв и все.
This is where it
На
all
этом все
ends.
закончилось.
I mean,
Я
the
имею в
further
виду
struggle with the
дальнейшая борьба с
Iran
ядерной
nuclear
программой
program is
Ирана
over.
закончилась.
We are waking
Мы
up in a
просыпаемся
radically new world.
кардинально
The
новым
opposite path
миром.
is the regime change. There is such a thought as I
И противоположный путь — смена режима. Есть такая мысль, как я чувствую,
feel in the
в
corresponding
соответствующей
structures of both
структуре и
Washington and
Вашингтона, и
Jerusalem. The
Иерусалима.
regime change in Iran, there are thoughts, there are
механизма
forces that can be raised.
есть мысли, есть силы, которые можно поднять. уже задействовали сына Шаха. Но надо сказать, что с Шахом-то поступили тоже мерзки, как вот всегда поступает Запад, когда человек или партия, или государство какое-то становится им не нужно.
He said that
Ближайший
chess was
друг
treated in a nasty way,
Друг
as the West
друга
always
Израиля
does when a person or a party
в
or some state
союзника
becomes
превратили на
unnecessary.
Ближнем Востоке.
He was a close friend of
Ближайший
Israel.
друг
Two of
Соединенных
his
Штатов
closest
Америки,
allies were in the Middle
как
East. He
выкинули
was a
его
close friend of the
человек с
United
этим
States of
с
America. They
онкологическим
threw him out, a
заболеванием,
man
и
with an
лечиться
oncological
надо, так и вот
disease.
так вот, даже из территории Соединенных Штатов выперли достаточно бесцеремонно, и где-то он там лечился от онкологического заболевания на Карибских, по-моему, на
To help him
Багамах,
heal.
боюсь соврать. Короче говоря, не захотели приютить бывшего союзника и помочь ему лечиться. Но вот сейчас заигрывают с его сыном, он здесь же живет неподалеку. Он
Already doing
говорит,
some kind of work.
что он
He says that
идет
he is
на
already
компромисс,
doing
у
some
него
kind
есть
of work,
сторонники
if he
среди
has
военных. Посмотрим. Но я думаю, что этот
supporters
путь
among the
не
military,
показался
we will see.
многообещающий,
But
потому
I
что
think
смена
that this path
режима,
is not promising because the
народ не
change of
будет
the regime,
толпами
the
на
people will
улицах
not go out in
поддерживать
crowds to
режима,
support the
который туда
regime,
придет
which will
на
come there on the
демонстрациях и
Israeli and
мероприятиях
American
шерах.
joints.
А
It is
оккупировать
possible to occupy the
территорию
territory of
Ирана
Iran for a long
в
time
длительное
to
время
support
для
such a
поддержки
regime.
такого
That
режима.
is, it is possible
Возможно,
to
его
throw it
с
from the
парашюта
parachute,
сбросить,
conditionally
условно говоря, да,
speaking, over the presidential
на
palace and
президентском
land there
коньке,
and
высадить
plant.
туда и посадить.
But as
Но,
Napoleon
я
said,
говорю,
you can come
Наполеон
to power on the
всегда
joints,
можно
but you
прийти к
can't
власти
sit on
долго,
them.
нельзя
And you
сидеть
will have to sit for a
на
long
привязи
time, and the
долго. А
territory
территория
is
здесь в
70
70
times
раз
larger
больше
in Iran than
Ирана,
in
нежели
Israel.
в Израиль. А
And the
население
population is about
примерно
10
в
times
10 раз
larger.
больше.
Americans, as they have
Американцы
been in
туда, как
Afghanistan
они
and
10
Iraq for
лет
10 years, will
были в
not go
Афганистане
there.
и в Ираке, не пойдут. То есть
That is,
ситуация
the situation
практически
is practically
на
on the
грани,
verge of success,
чтобы
on the
достичь
verge of
добиться
fantasy.
успеха, это так, на грани фантастики. Вот
And
такая,
so,
господа,
gentlemen, the
ситуация сложилась.
situation has
И, как
developed. And
всегда,
as
слава
always,
Украине
glory
и
to
вооруженным
Ukraine and
силам.
the armed
Враг будет
forces, the
разбит,
enemy will
победа
be
будет за
defeated.
нами.
The
Вам, дорогие
victory
друзья,
will be ours to
выдержки,
you, dear
мужества
friends,
и
endurance of
твердой веры
courage and firm
в нашу
faith in our
неизбежную
inevitable
победу.
victory. See you
До
soon.
новых скорых